shit's getting worse, whether or not we make it worse, whether or not we want it to get worse. So what we want to do is present an option and have kind of like an idea outline of how we can live our lives together, and how we can take care of each other. Like means check, folks. If you have it, it's yours.
You are listening to Fruitless, a podcast hosted by me, Josiah Sutton. This is episode 4, Revolution is Complicated, Hope is Simple, featuring Morgan Vander Hart.
Part of it is just that I've had a broken leg for 2 months now, but I really feel old, man. I don't know. I felt old in my head for a long time, but now my body's catching up. That's kind of disappointing. I thought I would just feel fine forever. I had that youthful imagination that my body would just keep going.
Yeah, well, you were kind of a weird combination because you felt old mentally, but then you also did young guy, I could never die kind of stuff at the same time.
Well, to be fair, I could never die.
That's true.
I think my resiliency might speak for itself. But
yeah.
Yes, the other day my joints started aching because it was raining outside, and
which is old man shit.
Yeah, no, I feel like I should
However, when I found out that you broke your femur, it was Mo broke his femur. Oh, he'll be fine.
Yeah, dude. Work accident, like an adult.
Of all my friends to break their femur, you're the one I know you'll make it. You'll be fine.
We didn't call an ambulance. I called my partner. I was sitting my bosses were staring at me, and I was just sitting on the lift waiting to catch my brain, and I called Ari. I was like, "Hey, you want to take me to the hospital?" And she was like, "Oh, yeah." She drove 30 minutes out to Polk City, come get me. Drove all the way back. I strapped up my leg with scrap wood and duct tape, like a fucking makeshift splint. my boss was like, we were waiting for Ari to get there, and he was like, I could have just driven you. No, it's fine. It'll be fine. Just sat there. I rolled in the ER. They thought I sprained something. ER doc after X-rays was like, yeah, it's pretty broken femur right there. Thanks, man.
Yeah, that's I stubbed my toe when I'm out of commission for a week.
I was legitimately yeah, give me 1 second, guys. I think I could walk it off.
Yeah, and then your bone splits in half.
Yeah, walking it off was not exactly the key to success.
Yeah,
I don't think.
Well, I'll say welcome to Fruitless, everybody. I am joined by a longtime friend that it's kind of odd it's been this long without you guesting on a podcast, so I felt like I needed to write that.
Sure. Well, yeah.
Yeah, Morgan Vander Hart. Longtime friend of mine, friend since high school.
I'm glad it took this long. I've been nervous to talk into a microphone on a recorded thing. I don't know why. I feel like it's either some sort of imposter syndrome, or it's just I don't want to talk about things that I like to people I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah,
either way,
that makes sense.
We're here now. We've
now.
We've bested our fears, and I'm here to not sound like an idiot as best I can. And
yeah.
Punches.
Why don't you kind of introduce yourself? I guess who are you as best you can?
Yeah, I'm a 24-year-old Aries from Des Moines, Iowa. I'm an anarchist. I'm a convicted felon, a violent felon.
We'll lead with that one. I
might be the only person in Iowa to currently hold a charge for assaulting a police officer with a laser pointer. But I would be happy to find out I'm not, I guess, or not. I hope more people got away with it than I did.
You did.
But yeah, that's one of my things. It's just my vibe, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm involved in a couple of mutual aid projects. I, along with others, helped organize Edna Griffin Mutual Aid in 2021 or 2020.
Something like that. It was around
when
so the BLM 2020 protest kind of died down. Edna Griffin kind of sprung up in the ashes of that.
Yeah, it was 2020, like in the fall that year. I think we started doing like hot food and coffee, and then eventually.
Yeah, that's right. Because I tried to get a bunch of people in a theology class I was in to donate to it.
Nice. How'd that go for you?
Nobody did it, I don't think, because I don't know. But we were talking briefly about mutual aid in reference to Dorothy Day, and I was like, speaking of that, if you want to give some money to mutual aid, let me tell you.
Hell yeah, dude. It's been an interesting ride in Des Moines. I think 2020 kind of spurred the quote radical scene in Des Moines. Like a lot of people who didn't really know each other got brought together in a fashion that was kind of unprecedented in our area. So a lot of efforts on different ends and different groups came together. And different things formed. And, not all of it is straight up like anarchist style mutual aid or organized mutual aid. I don't know. We'll probably get into the meat of what it is and what it could be and what it is not and all that bullshit. But I don't know. 2020 really did an interesting thing in the radical space that a lot of the old
crazy year.
Yeah, a lot of the old heads were so amazed that people could actually that common effort happened and a popular movement started happening. And whether or not a lot of ground was made, I still think we did some cool stuff. I'm a fucking pessimistic guy, and I still think it's really, really beautiful to see what came from those movements and those whatever failures we had. We also had wins, the bail efforts that existed alone. I'm involved with some of that now, but I wasn't involved with it then. I benefited from it then, but just the ability the ability to get our
that's how I got involved in it actually because you got arrested.
Yeah, fun times. Yes, best cigarette I've ever had. But yeah, just the efforts we were able to put together to get with just some homies and whatever we could pull. I don't know. I think it's been really interesting overall, and we can get into more of why it's interesting if you have questions. I'm just gonna keep rambling until you stop me.
No, you're good. So Mo is involved in some kind of anarchist organizing kind of stuff here in Des Moines. And one of the themes of Fruitless that I want to keep coming back to, the first episode was about it, is trying to understand what the Midwest is and how it what political potentials it has, and so kind of no better person to kind of chat with about this because, you were definitely on the front lines for a lot of what happened in Des Moines. And Des Moines is kind of a forgotten piece of the BLM 2020 protests, for good reason, because the shit that was going on in New York and Portland and is obviously much, much bigger. But for I think a lot of people, myself included, Des Moines was this moment of holy shit, we can actually do this. We can actually show up. Because before that we always talked a lot about organizing and what trying to get involved with the left in Des Moines, and 2020 is such a funny year because it shows that demonstration. Because do you remember that small protest that we attended in the beginning of 2020 after
wasn't it the one we tried to,
yeah, we kind of organized it, but it was 5 people. And it was right after the assassination of Soleimani in Iran. So there was the talk of war in Iran going on. And so we did a little baby anti-war protest outside the Capitol. And I mean, genuinely, it was 5 people. Yeah. And a couple months later, there were riots.
And COVID and everything. So much stuff happened at the beginning. And I think what we really saw was we saw Minneapolis doing the shit, and I think there was a certain pressure for the state that's 3 hours below like Minneapolis to kind of show up a little bit instead of like punk out and drop the ball, you know. And it was really cool to show like that people actually showed up, and there was like really cool militancy in the beginning that whether or not that faded throughout the militancy aspect, I still think that fervor was a beautiful thing to see. And when people get fucking pissed,
you know, I think about like, you know, like movements like Occupy, you know, they got crushed, but they also created kind of an awareness. And I know that's kind of a cliche liberal thing to point out, but like, sure. I don't know. I didn't know that the Des Moines had the police budget it did until I saw like fucking riot cops in Des Moines. And I you know, it was like a shocking amount of, you know, funding they were receiving, and it's like, why does Iowa have the fucking like sonic guns and fucking tanks? Like,
yeah, the LRADs,
why do we have that?
Bearcats.
And I have to believe a lot of the like 16-year-old girls that got maced in front of the Capitol building, like those people are getting radicalized probably by that crackdown, and so I think we'll see the impacts of this maybe in like 10 years.
Yeah.
If they don't just kind of think of it as, oh, my radical phase when I was a teenager, but if they really digest it and like think about, you know, this shit that was abstract is also here in this city.
Yeah, I think it. One thing it did was expose a lot of like the more liberal crowd, or even like the younger crowd, to shit that a lot of folks were and have been experiencing for years and years and years, forever. Honestly, like. The entire history of the United States has been the history of violence. So like, you know, it's like those younger white kids in Des Moines who hadn't like ever realized that Des Moines is a fucked up authoritarian state got exposed to that, and hopefully like have gotten some sort of stronger analytical base post that experience. But trauma is a really interesting thing to push people towards a radical situation, because you realize you have like less of an option but to do what you need to do to get out of that situation, you know. And that's kind of I don't know, that's kind of where mutually might come in. Like I believe a lot of it is like there's a couple different routes you can take with it, but a lot of the basis, I believe, is the basis of any liberatory action. It has to have a strong mutual aid base. Let me say that again. Liberatory action is found. Let me say that again. Shit. Mutual aid is the foundation of all liberatory action and all liberatory effort. You know, historically, that's just the case, and that's in an organized fashion sometimes. But it's like even when it comes down to like smaller guerrilla fighting, smaller efforts on a more local scale, like just people helping each other through those things. I lost my train of thought. We'll get back to it.
No, but I mean, it's like building communities and stuff that just didn't exist before then. So that's kind of why I think that although 2020 was kind of like the revolution that failed in the US, it was also like, I don't know, like it started to put pieces in places that they weren't. You know, it started to kind of form the board of what like organizing looks like in the US. And looking at politics away from just like electoral stuff, because, you know, for 2020 for me, like went from knocking on doors for the Bernie Sanders campaign to then actually like, you know, standing in front of, you know, riot shields.
Yeah,
and,
man.
You know, there was like a distinct moment of like the failure of electoral politics, and then the rage at the system failing with COVID, and then with like racist violence going on, and eventually, you know, it started to realize that we need to do something outside of this system in some way. Not that reforms or whatever aren't important, because, you know, we should be fighting for those as well. But it was just the realization that more needs to be done than just making sure people vote.
For sure, yeah. I mean, getting trapped in that, like, the electoral cycle or the voting cycle or even the reform cycle is how, like, the fascist state revives itself, and it reforms, and it hides itself and camouflages itself in reform. George Jackson critiques reform heavily on that basis, that the way that fascism and the U.S. fascist state exist is smarter than just like an outright authoritarian state. They are outright authoritarian, but they're smart enough to be able to hide it in their different I'm on a tangent, dude. I'm gonna have to like slip off tangents, but yeah, no, it's.
I love tangents. It's fun.
Yeah, I keep losing my train of thoughts because I'm ADD as fuck. But like if you can keep disguising your oppression in different forms, then it's much harder to fight against that oppression. And I think that's sometimes what like they'll do with electoralism, they'll do with reforms, is to reshape it and be like, hey, look, we did this thing. It's not that bad anymore. Everyone go back to sleep. It'll be fine. Yeah, it's fine. And that reduces the temperature where like we're in a position where we have very little choice but to deal with what's in front of us now, and like the temperature's raised, like literally, both literally and figuratively. Like temperature is up. It's more time for action than for talking, and it's not. There's the time to ask a politician to fix something for you has passed. And they're not coming to save us. Like one of the biggest tenets of mutual aid in an organized fashion, like as a theory, is that we protect us, we keep ourselves safe, and whether or not that's from the basis of like an organization, like the One Mutual Aid or Exeter Griffin Mutual Aid, where it's like a specific political, we have a more specific political program or an established organization, and mutual aid is our foundation there, and that's what we do. Like we go out to do like propane and stuff for food for the campers and the houses we work with. Like that's coming from an organizational standpoint, but really like mutual aid at its bare bones is just people helping each other survive. Like it's like Kropotkin argued heavily for it just being an evolutionary factor instead of a specific organizational practice. And I think it's both. I think mutual aid is and has existed for millennia. It's been a thing. Like when you look at any tribes in like Turtle Island here or in Africa or anywhere, like that's been a basis of like survival. Is you need each other, you rely on each other, and you have a responsibility to each other, and that I think we've gotten away from heavily, and that we've specifically been alienated from each other with through capitalism. So mutual aid, I think, is kind of bringing it back to who people are and why we are. We're here for each other. We need each other. But we're so isolated and individualized in society. I think working in the world with a more collective mindset is really important. Mutual aid offers that as concept and a way of constructing something outside of what we know, and it offers survival in times of crumbling and in times of panic, because you establish a community base that you can rely on together. Like, I don't know, like I'll use my breaking my fucking leg, for instance. It's like I work in the community that I love and that I put effort into. And then when I broke my leg and I needed help, people were there for me. And it literally is just as simple as that sometimes, especially like on a person-to-person level on a community basis, is people helping each other when they're down and when they need help and being there for each other instead of having to rely on systems and rely on politicians. You handle your own shit and people with you handle shit together,
I have had a number of times through Twitter where I had posted about being in a rough spot financially, not even like not fishing for help even, and people have just like stepped in and Venmoed me money, and like that's kind of the basics of mutual aid, is just taking care of each other, because hopefully now I'm in a position that I can then help other people and I'm able to be the one to Venmo someone else later on. It's a relationship. However, that's kind of an odd example because that's digital, which that kind of is an interesting aspect of mutual aid. Like, in
2020 there's like this beyond
thing. Because like the bail funds in Minneapolis were like receiving a shit ton of money. My girlfriend was bringing like water bottles and supplies down to the protests, here in Des Moines. And part of the way she raised that money is, she like put her Venmo out on Snapchat and, like raised like $1,000 to like go and, bring, buy a shit ton of, water and food and stuff. And mutual aid's as simple as even like, even though my mom's political allegiances probably wouldn't line up with this, when I did a jail fund, she made a bunch of cookies because she was like, sure, I'll make cookies for a bunch of kids getting out of jail, like whatever.
Yeah.
And like, there's something about that, like, there's almost like a maternal side of like mutual aid. It's like that taking care of each other. I don't know. Yeah.
No, for real. I think two things or multiple things have happened to the phrase in general, as it's been like, I think the internet can be good for some things and some things it's really bad for, but like having blown mutual aid through like the internet sphere, it's become like this thing where it's like almost a grandiose, like self-appreciating thing. That's
bad.
This big organization, it's like doing mutual aid and shit where like it almost becomes co-opted and you're starting to like intentionally organizations are confusing the charity model versus the mutual aid model.
Right.
Extremely different things.
Yes, you should. When you finish this thought, you should clarify the difference between those two for the listener.
I'll do my best. I'm hopped up on LaCroix, but it's been turned into this almost co-optable term, like a lot of radical terms have been since 2020, since like the beginning of radicalism versus authoritarianism. Like co-optation is such a heavy thing that is done intentionally, like it's intentional. But like you see like the term mutual aid being used by like even pigs and fucking NGOs and shit, where you're completely removing the community basis from it. And I think like mutual aid is specifically like as it stands, it's a small program thing. It's not like big multi-state, multinational corporations doing things. Mutual aid is a community-based activity, and it in and of itself is anti-hierarchical, and it just stands for us to take care of each other. And it's, I think when you get into like the charity model of that, it sustains hierarchy and it legitimizes systems that oppress, and it maintains that hierarchy by like deciding who gets what, and there's way more to it, but you have to be able to distinguish between what is charity, what is like bourgeois charity, and what is just like mutual aid in aspect. I would recommend people read for like a really clear, like you could read Kropotkin's Mutual Aid, which is like a dense book. It's good.
It's a theory book.
It's a theory book. I got a lot of evolutionary theory in it as well, but if you need like a really concise thing, Dean Spade's Mutual Aid is something we had a lot of our groups read. It breaks down that shit a lot better than I can right now. But there's some really good things on there that help fight that mentality that you can slip into as an organization. And I think it's important that if you're going to do that mutual aid in an organized fashion, in which you don't have to. Organizations have pros and cons for sure. But if you're going to do that mutual aid via organization, it's really good for like leadership in that consented leadership, and like different ways of making decisions, and different ways of running an organization efficiently, so you don't tear each other's throats out. Continue your work, but I don't know. I'm much more of a fan these days, of just community-based mutual aid, where it's small and where it's people, and where you like walk around your neighborhood and you talk to folks. Like something I did in my neighborhood when we were supposed to have like this big storm. It was like all hyped up in the news. It was like a derecho, but it was like kind of like a derecho, people were calling it, because it was familiar to that. But I like walked around my neighborhood and knocked on as many doors as I could. And I was like, hey, if you need anything, come find me. Like, I introduced myself. I was like, hi, I'm your neighbor.
Yeah.
I have this ability. If you need something, let me know and I'll help you with whatever. And it's just, it really is just like finding people
it's that simple.
You can talk to and being there for people and like being willing to like, I don't know. I think one of the most beautiful things that comes from mutual aid is just your ability to connect with people on that level. It's much harder to be a political organization that comes in with ideals and is like, hey, we're anarcho-communists, we're anarcho-syndicalists, like sign this and we'll work with you and we'll like tell you all about us, and we have like the food and shit, which is like respect like people who do it well. I've done it both kind of well and poorly also, but like it really sometimes is as simple as just like being there for your neighbors, being there for people who need you, and like forming a community and like helping filling people's gaps. Like just I don't know, it's just people being it's so hard to it's so weird to describe just help being nice to each other as like a theory basis from like a theory basis, but you know, like I think it's almost lost and forgotten. We're so isolated in this community, or in this society, like I said earlier, that we forget to think about others in all sorts of circumstances. And you don't have to like it's really cool to do like the mutual aid stuff that's popping up like via Venmo. Like I've seen a lot of people like helping fund abortions through that and helping fund different like gender affirming surgeries and all sorts of beautiful things. And so the internet's really beautiful in that aspect, but it does need, I think the biggest defining factor of mutual aid is it's community based, you know, like with Edna Griffin and Des Moines Mutual Aid, we work in the houseless camps, and some of the one of the more important factors, like we were helping provide like life-saving necessities and heaters and propane through the winter and blankets and whatever have you, whatever we get our hands on, whatever we could pull from donations, food, whatnot. But one of the biggest and coolest things we do is like help form relationships with folks, like talk to motherfuckers and help like just be chill, you know. We weren't like coming in as we didn't come into those communities with the idea that we were better than them and that we had something to offer them, but instead we were just them, you know. We were just like them, like, you know, I'm a greasy motherfucker. Like it's fun. Like I like talking to folks out there. Like they're some of the most beautiful people I've ever met, and you can get into such, I think, a lot of like some of the negative things I've seen coming out of like mutual aid work, as like been like the reformation of just like the same bullshit you see like nonprofits coming off of, like Joppa in our cities, a big example of a bullshit organization. Like, not to shit on Christians on your podcast, probably, but like, they're a Christian organization that's super fucked. Like they route a bunch of it's basically a front for money, but like they like go out and like sign out heaters to folks, and then if those heaters don't like get returned to them, they charge them for it. Which,
oh my god,
yeah, no, it's fucked on a lot of levels, but like heaters fucking break. Like one of the important aspects is like if you're going to like form a mutual aid organization that is more formal, I would say, or is a political organization, then one of the biggest aspects I think you can hold is to, you know, like means check folks, you know, or, you know,
absolutely,
like, ask for like proof that they need something. You just like, if you have it, it's yours. Like it removes, you know, like
which not to pull the religion card again, but in my mind anyway, that's more accurate to a Christian mentality anyway, right? It's supposed to be no strings attached. It's supposed to be like, you know, again, not to be corny, but like Jesus wasn't like means testing before he died. Like, you know, you know, I don't know. It is frustrating because, yeah, you're right. Like a lot of the Christian charities end up becoming these really hierarchical institutions, which in theory is supposed to be very much the opposite of how it's supposed to function, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, that's kind of why I like you coming on and talking about mutual aid, because to me, this models what, like, you know, if Christians are going to be active in the world, this is what they're supposed to be doing, you know, is this shit. Like, actually just... Well, and also it's a good critique of like online leftists, because one thing that struck me about you throughout the years we've known each other is that you are good at just being normal with people.
I don't know what that fucking means, but cool.
You know what I mean? Well, because like what you're saying, you're like, you're not going to knock on fucking doors around and be like, do you want to join my Vanguardist party? You're just like, do you want to hang out?
Yeah,
you know, and that's a more, I think, basis for, I don't know, building those kind of relationships is just actually being able to hang out with someone.
Yeah, just being a fucking person. Stop.
Being friends with people.
Yeah, like so much I think, and this is like a completely different topic, but like so many so much of humanity is lost in like in a grasping effort for perfection. Like we are fucked up people. Like humans are just stupid and fucked up. We're we're idiots, and it's a historical precedent. We've always been idiots.
Yep.
Stop. You cannot it's hard. You can't. Give me something to say, I'll say it. Give me something to use. Give me anything at all. I don't know what to do.
Yeah, man. Well, maybe we could pivot here while doing this because, we'll come back to mutual aid because that's so much of what you're doing these days. But maybe, contextualize. So, we've known each other for a long time, right? Actually, so I've talked about, not on this show, but on other shows that I played in a band for a while and stuff. This is the drummer from that band, Mo Vander Hart.
Fucking the world is flat /
the world is
anti-conscience, dude.
Oh man,
why did we name ourselves anti-conscience?
I don't remember.
I think we thought it was
because we were 16.
Yeah. I wore a fucking Cookie Monster shirt for our first show. We weren't hot shit at all.
But even after that, the band broke up. You've continued to do music stuff. You actually toured and shit. You did stuff with Hotel Books and Vitamin K and all sorts of cool stuff.
Fair bit of fill-in drumming and playing music and doing dumb shit on the road.
Yeah.
Getting drunk in too many weird places and falling asleep in weird places.
That's where our lives kind of split off because we were both homeschooled evangelicals, and then I went to college.
That shit's redacted, dude.
Oh yeah.
That history is redacted.
Our history is redacted. Yeah. Oh man, I could be even more embarrassing and talk about your father being a conservative blogger. That's pretty well known.
Dude, it keeps coming up. We don't talk anymore, obviously, for a lot of different reasons. But fucking, he did a fucking podcast on Antifa, which if you haven't listened to it, it's pretty gold. It's with some Green Beret schmuck talking about fucking Antifa's funded by George Soros in China. And,
that's awesome.
Dumbass motherfucker pulling shit out of his ass.
He fucking knows better because if anybody's in Antifa quotation marks, it would be you, his own son.
What? Fucking yeah.
Unnamed person I know has trolled your dad multiple times on Twitter by going, your son thinks you're a fascist.
Wait, really? I didn't know that. That's fucking funny.
Which I will.
Oh, really? Fuck yeah, no.
Yeah, he'll be because your dad will be all cocky on Twitter, and then he'll reply and be like, "Your son's a communist." What?
I should tell I'm not a communist.
At the time, I think you were more in that camp, but this is a few years back.
Figured stuff out, that's fucking funny. No, I've made fun of him quite a bit. It's
you moved more. I think both of us shifted more libertarian in general. I think it's funny because I don't know. You pivoted all the way anarchist. I'm kind of I don't know what the fuck I am. Libertarian, Marxist.
I know. I pray for you. Don't worry.
Thank you. Yeah. One day I'll find out.
I think God is fake, but I every once in a while I get out on my knees.
Thank you. Thanks,
man. Bring Josiah over to the dark side.
No, yeah. I don't know. I read Luxembourg recently. That seems like that was kind of up my alley.
I'm not familiar, actually.
Rosa Luxemburg? Oh, she's cool. Actually, what we were talking about earlier made me think of her because I read Reform and Revolution. And she argued that you can't create socialism through reforms, but that the function of reforms was to give victories to the working class to raise class consciousness. and like be part of like forming those like communities and stuff like that. And that seems like that's up my alley. I think I agree with that. Where it's like it's still worth fighting for healthcare. You know what I mean? Like it's not like not worth it. But part of that function is to make people see that like, oh, we can say fuck you to the establishment in some way. Yeah.
There's like counterpoints to that. I think like there's a lot of theory based in the idea that reform actually makes it harder to organize a class movement because it creates apathy. You know, it can, I guess. Where if you're dealing with material condition and that material condition is sending you on a trajectory towards a revolutionary effort, which whether or not you believe mass class movement in the United States is a possible thing, there's the concept that like if you're on a revolutionary trajectory, a reform is a way of like reducing that temperature,
tempering things.
So you become less revolution. Your potential for revolution becomes less, and I mean, like I've seen that in like a microcosm from like electoralism and stuff in like Des Moines alone. Have, like you shift from like a specific movement that's like trying to get to a more radical place, and then you plug in like elected official or political movements in like our system, and then it reduces the willingness and the mobilization effort, I guess.
I think the distinction is making sure that those victories are seen as like victories won by the protesters or something like that, rather than things that the some establishment has gifted. You know, I think that's probably the line, because I think she was probably right, but she was writing in early 1900s. She was like, right. She was a supporter and critic of the Russian Revolution. She was calling it out for authoritarianism early on. And so that's why I like her. I am sure that has alienated a handful of people listening already, but
fucking sure. Yeah. I think oftentimes when we're so focused on reforms, you are inherently legitimizing a system because the system exists. You're asking the system to change itself, and when it gives you that reform, it reasserts its power to create that material condition in a different fashion. So it's still legitimizing and maintaining power, though it might be enhancing some material conditions. Like I think especially in the U.S., like our material conditions are based off the backs of everyone else in the entire world.
Sure.
So I'm comfortable with our quality of life being lessened, but that's a whole conversation with a lot of back alleys and stuff. No, I think a lot of the goal of mutual aid, at least where I come from and where a lot of the folks I work with come from, is like shit's getting worse, whether or not we make it worse, whether or not we want it to get worse. So what we want to do is present an option and have kind of like an idea out in the world of how we can live our lives together, and how we can take care of each other. Like, I don't think it's possible to stop a lot of the shit that's going to be happening soon. Things will be going worse. Like, we're going to be facing some food shortages. There's a lot of different things happening on the global economic scale that are going to affect a lot of things here. And how we react to that is what's important. How we take our communities into our own hands, and how we defend those by whatever means you choose necessary.
Yeah. I think you're right. I don't know. Yeah. There's two sides to this. At least in the local context, I think you're right, because I don't know to what extent like the Midwest is going to be winning much reform anyway. Just because the Midwest is pivoting pretty right wing right now in general. Yes, the previous guest on this episode, on this show, Chris Barker, has talked a lot about that. He moved to Tennessee recently, and what he's talked about is like that. Weirdly, Tennessee is becoming more progressive than Iowa is. That he's like, it's actually probably it's a better space for him to be in. And you wouldn't expect like the South to be doing that, but like you see the shit that's happening in Iowa right now, and there's some scary stuff going on. there really is this like reactionary turn. And so, yeah, like I think maybe just saying fuck it to the institutions as they currently exist and start trying to form your own institutions, your own communities, whatever. It's probably the best path here.
Yeah. You're kind of describing that concept of dual power. It's like building up like structures and organizations. And there's a lot to be said for that, and there's also a lot of critique for that. Like, I think a lot of people have done a good job at pointing out that when a popular movement does decide to happen, the organization probably won't have much to do with it. But like, I think there's a lot of value still in having that dual power, where you will be able to take care of the people that you've been working with, like people in your city, people on your block, people like around you in your community, your neighbor, your person next door, your family. Like having the ability to take upon yourself as a community the survival of yourselves, and have that responsibility for each other is important.
Yeah.
I appreciate the anarchist trope that like anarchism is about freedom and like personal freedom and independence, but it also counter to like right-wing libertarianism. It's we believe there's an innate responsibility to each other, and within our freedom, like freedom has responsibilities, So I don't think it's like a fuck all. I think that the collectivist mindset is at least where I fall, where I want to fall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's complicated. The world's complicated. Like,
the world's complicated.
It's hard. It's hard to apply any sort of fucking theory that anyone's had forever to any sort of bullshit that's happening these days, because we've just fucked ourselves into a corner of such ridiculous complications, and there's nukes everywhere. Like it's the world we live in is not the world that people have assessed properly, in the past.
Yeah.
Like class theory and stuff like that is outdated. Like a lot of theory is outdated, and I think if we actually want to build a world that's proper and better for humanity to be, for humans and humanity to be humans and humanity, then we can't exist in the structures we have now. We have to tear it down and like completely build new things. At least that's where I'm coming from. That's what I use. Complete destruction of our structures and the reorganization of structures, however that happens.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily believe you have to have all the answers for that framework to exist. I think specifically, like, you can use like decolonization as a aspect of that. Like a lot of settler like attitudes towards decolonization are like, hey, what about me? Like, what will happen when we decolonize? Like, when it's not actually a metaphor, it's not like a catchy phrase for people using their Instagram things. It's like when it's actually a project. But I think you don't have to the colonized don't owe you an answer. They don't owe the settler an answer for like the framework to exist. For that effort to be tangible, an actual project that exists. So I don't think you can operate on the scale that you have, or operate under the assumption that you have all the answers, because I don't believe we can. Your perfect plan for your communist state will end up working out. People are very complicated, and things have to be taken with a grain of salt. Not everything's black and white, and you have to be willing to take people as they are and figure out how to work together. It's complicated. Absolutely, everything's complicated. You have to act like it's complicated. Remember that, otherwise we'll never get anywhere. Or else. That was just me yelling about.
No. It's good though. It's good. How do you see things kind of forming in the Midwest here, in Des Moines? Well, maybe not even Midwest. How does it forming in Des Moines, like in your own context? Where do you think things are going? I guess
things are going. I don't know. Like I think orgs are kind of strained right now, and I don't want to really get into like the individual organization politics and everything, but like we're in a phase where we're gonna have to reassess and go from there. I think because of 2020 and because of like the efforts of a lot of different community organizations, consciousness in Des Moines is probably higher than it ever has been. I think there might be a slump where we have to reform and rethink, but we're headed for such such hard times, like things are only going to get worse from here. It's never going to get better.
Yeah.
We're going to get it's going to get way worse before anything gets better, which is really depressing to hear. But if you're willing to confront the truth now, you'll be more prepared for it in reality. So I foresee more people taking care of each other. I think that trend has been really beautiful to see, like people coming together and people working on stuff, whether it's more or not, like trying to take care of each other as best as we can. And I think pressure is something that does a lot for people. When like you can use any sort of natural disaster as a barometer for like how people act in stressful situations. Like, yeah, you're gonna have your shitheads, you're gonna have your authoritarian, you're gonna have your statists, but like at the end of the day, like people will come out of the woodwork to help each other when shit is on the line and when shit is bad. You can use the derecho as an example here. All those tornadoes that ripped through, like I believe it was Kentucky recently. Like, there were state actors and there was bullshit happening there, but like people helping each other through rough times. I mean, like Katrina, another beautiful example of organization and self-defense, armed self-defense in that case, and a lot of things. There's a really cool book called Black Flags and Windmills that goes over common ground in Katrina's history. And I can't quote it word for word, but it's a really interesting. It was a really interesting community effort with anarchist foundations that sprung up out of chaos, and that helped people survive and that helped each other survive. And they were determined to protect themselves by any means, and I think that's such an interesting thing. A lot to learn from it,
Yeah, that it's kind of an interesting observation, because I think usually when we think of like natural catastrophe and stuff, we think of like chaos breaking out and people fucking each other over. But it seems like you're kind of suggesting that, like, yeah, that does happen, but also that the opposite happens, that in those moments people kind of actually band together and start taking care of each other.
100%. It's a historical precedent. Like,
when I think of the derecho, here, and I think of natural disasters that have happened here or elsewhere, you're right. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah,
I think it's like while we still live in this hellscape of an isolated society, like people really at the base care about each other. I think, and you obviously will get like folks who do not, that have really fallen into the pig mentality. But like regular people, poor people, oppressed minorities, like marginalized communities will like fight for each other. They're there for each other. When you start reaping the benefits of the capitalist state, then I think you start to fall off the wagon on that helping each other out. But when you're under the boot, you work together to lift the boot off. So,
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah. Well, so I mean, that's kind of a thing, because the Midwest is going to face, I think, a lot of interesting challenges in the next couple decades. One is obviously just, as much as we like to say that we will be safe from climate change, in the Midwest, we won't. And I think the derecho and some of these like these tornadoes that hit us in December, suggest that, shit will be bad here. However, the other reality is it's not going to be quite as bad as like the coasts, right? And so we're also going to be like seeing the influx of immigration and stuff. And so like something that Josh Christensen and I were talking about in the Midwest episode we did a few, like last month or whatever, was that, part of what's going to be important is trying to reform what we think of as the Midwest and who the people of the Midwest are, because the reality is it's about to change real fast. Like, sure, it's a majority white suburban kind of vibe right now, although that's not even fully true, but that's the myth, right? But that's about to change radically as we see like, immigrants coming in. Yeah. And at this point, like the best we can do, and it kind of plugs into what you're saying, is to like encourage people to think about like hospitality as like a Midwestern precedent, because like within like the Midwest niceness, right? There is the idea of supposedly being hospitable. They aren't oftentimes, but that value exists, right?
Like
and I think we need to start. Yeah, go ahead.
It's like that hospitality with the like spit in your food.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's like it's almost like here in the Midwest, people need to start hammering that home, that idea of hospitality, because it's about to get crazy.
Yeah.
And, this whole group of people looking out for each other can either be really good or really bad, because it can either be people taking care of each other in their communities in times of crisis and accepting new people in as they come, or it can be I protect my own and fuck whoever shows up.
And I think we're definitely going to be seeing a lot of that too. And one thing I really fear going forward is that like this catastrophe, this border mentality that has been so prevalent in American society is going to be expounded upon, like state-wise. Like I think we're going to see a lot of like state fighting over like migrants from different states, and like you can see microcosms of that from like the wildfires on the West Coast, like people being displaced from that, being treated like shit where they end up. Like maybe they'll be treated cool for like a month, and they'll be like, "Why the fuck are you still here? Like our house is burned down. We don't have anywhere to go." It doesn't sometimes it doesn't last long, But I think I agree with you. Like, I also see a lot of. I think the organization possibilities are unknown. Like when we start facing crises, that's when I think like organization really comes into play, where people really step up and see problems. That's one of the kind of the ways I don't necessarily think you can prepare for some sort of revolution anymore, or at least I'm not fully convinced of it anymore. Like I used to be when I was more of like a communist or anarcho-syndicalist or whatever. Like I think shit is gonna happen regardless of like our small power that we might have, and being able to deal with it, roll with the punches, and maybe keep some folks alive is a really valuable thing. Our ability to deal with what we deal with in the time it arrives, is important.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why I believe laying that framework for mutual aid, giving that knowledge and that ability to more people, and like showing people alternative ways to live is so cool and important when it comes to that. But
I think this is why, although I think like tendency wise as a leftist, I'm more in the Marxist tradition, the communist tradition, than like the anarchist tradition. I like the anarchist tradition a lot, because I think there's this more and more, it's obvious that the system is about to fail. And I like the anarchists because they're not like obsessed with how to seize the state or whatever. They're more like, this thing's about to cave in. We got to build something new that's going to replace it when the time comes.
Or even being prepared for it, or like being ready to see people like live out their self-determined existences.
Yeah, because I think that's fundamentally right. Is like, it's not like, we shouldn't be waiting on the revolution to come in the U.S. because whether the revolution is going to happen or not, who fucking knows? But what is going to definitely happen is, if not the collapse of our systems, like a fundamental challenge to the systems is going to happen soon.
Truly.
Because of climate change. Because climate change is a given. Because the immigration that climate change causes is a given. These aren't like hypotheticals. These are things that will happen in a few decades. Yeah. And so we need to be looking at our communities and going, are the fuckers that I'm around right now, are they going to start gunning down refugees? Or are we going to be a community that takes them in?
Yeah. Also having your small communities that are willing to gun down the people gunning down refugees. It's there's a lot of levels to it, and I think the unknown is such a scary thing that trying to put answers to it sometimes leads us down the wrong path. But I'd rather just be ready to deal with the unknown. I've been doing a little bit of reading. I recently read Serafinsky's "Blessed is the Flame." It's anarcho-nihilism, and they get pretty heavy into like organizational efforts. A lot of it is like, hey, we're not necessarily capable of stopping what's happening, whether it be from like a popular movement scale, organized scale, things are just going to go bad, and being willing to accept that fact and deal with it. And I'm paraphrasing, obviously, so take it with a grain of salt. But like they would use like concentration camp revolutions or efforts to fight back in concentration camps as an effort or as an example. Like a lot of the organization that happened during those, some of the most successful ones, and successful is a hard term to use. The most successful camp revolts weren't necessarily because of the people who were organizing to revolt. You know, they were spontaneous moments that did the best they could. But a lot of the time, you'll get into this cycle, and you see this a lot on like the leftist side or whatever. Like the left broadly is, I think it's more atomized than it ever has been these days. But
Christ, I mean, not to go on this tangent, but like, Ukraine has really brought out to me how atomized the.
Let me wrap real quick though. Like, I think you'll see like a lot of people consistently being like, "Hey, the temperature's not right. It's not the right time. It's not the right moment," and that's something I think really is really cool about like anarchy and personal autonomy and like cell and community autonomy, or however you want to put it, is you have the ability to fight back on your individual level, however you deem fit, and it opens up that door a little bit more. And something Sarah Fitzky would get into is like, shit is fucked, and it's gonna get fucked no matter what you do. It's still important to fight. It's still important to like have. It's a liberatory effort in and of yourself to just fight back against the thing. Whether it's not like whether or not you like punch the cop in the face that's arresting you, then you know you're going to go to prison for a long time anyway. Or whether or not it's like fighting back in a concentration camp while you're marching people to their deaths, or while you're being marched to your death. It's still important to fight because you're liberating yourself. Yeah. Even in that moment, you know. And it's a fight. It's something, you know. It's a lot to look up. I wouldn't recommend like people who are new to like communism, anarcho-communism, or anarchism start with anarcho-nihilism. I think you should develop a broader understanding of both class. Where's the word I'm looking for? Class
conflict.
Conflict, and like other sorts of revolutionary efforts and decolonization. But I think it's a cool concept to dive into, and I think more and more it seems less like a stupid thing to think, you know. You know, it's hard to imagine. It's hard to imagine like especially with the level of power we have now, like a actual socialist popular movement moving forward, and then actually maintaining and moving forward to something that's like good, you know. Yeah. People don't like to really critique, like understand how bad like socialist movements can go when there's specific factors involved. Like Fanon wrote whole chapters about like what to avoid when you're doing a decolonization effort, like specifically looking at Algeria, but like shit is complicated, man.
Shit, like, it can go really sour, and I mean, like people forget that Mussolini was an anarchist. Yeah, initially, you know, like this. It's important to, I don't know, grasp onto just a commitment to that resistance. But yeah, you're right. It's complicated, and it is possible for a socialist movement to get really bad. Yeah.
Especially when you don't like one of the biggest things is like weeding out like bourgeois elements, and it's just so you have to get so nitty gritty, picky about every single aspect for something to go proper and in like a state based social movement. And you know, it's like that's where I keep just landing. Like, I don't thinking you can have the answers for how the world's about to play out is fucking stupid. Like, you can have critique and you can have an analysis, and that will help you form things as shit's on fire. But like, imagining you're going to be able to like form a communist party and like take power in the United States is like dumb as fuck. You know, like I'm sorry, but like you're wasting your time and everyone else.
I feel like a lot of MLs, like Marxist Leninists in the U.S. at least, they feel like they're cosplaying, because it's there's no fucking Vanguard Party is about to do a coup, in the US. Like, what the fuck do you think you're doing? But, you know, especially because like these fuckers usually hate their neighbors. It's like, I don't know, like, you know, sometimes I think we need to have a more like regionalist or localist way of pulling things back in and just being like, okay, what does my community need? You know, in a way, like in the way that like a lot of the activism you got involved with did. It's more like, okay, well, there's a homelessness problem in Des Moines. Let's take care of each other. You know, like let's focus on that shit and not like, yeah.
While you're talking, go ahead.
No, yeah, go ahead.
Like, while you're talking about all this shit and, like, all your imaginations for your utopian society, your authoritarian utopian society, people gotta fucking eat. Like, just get food to people. It's not as hard as, it's like, not everything is as grandiose and complicated as it seems. Revolution is not very romantic. Like, as Fanon would put it, decolonization it reeks of red hot cannonballs. Like, shit is bad. Yeah. It's not a romantic thing. Like, it's violent. It's also beautiful. It's so complicated. I'm going to keep calling it complicated. But like, I know much love to some MLs who actually have a of reality or like based in reality and aren't necessarily trying to rebuild the Soviet Union. But you get some pretty dumb motherfuckers who are still like status and like fucking repping China and all of it. Fucking it's that's what's been moving me libertarian is watching like MLs like you know, like 8D chess their way into cheering on Putin. It's like, are you fucking stupid? More than one thing can be right. More than one thing can be correct, and more than one thing can be wrong. You can hate Russia. You can hate Ukraine. You can hate NATO. You can hate the US. You can hate the EU. Yeah. You can hate everyone because everyone's doing fucked up things. Ukraine is doing war crimes. Russia is doing war crimes. War is a war crime. Like, I don't get it.
Man.
I don't fucking get it. It's you're just eating shit up and you're not like really. I don't know. I think it comes from like some weird. I don't have a green. I'm pissed, so I'm gonna agree for it.
It's international relations brain. It's, you know.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Like, all that to say, like, I think what you need to do is you know, kind of what I'm getting at and kind of what I feel like the conclusion we're coming to is like, you need to focus. You need to focus on your own communities and try to like find hope in those, like form hope, even if there's no hope. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I don't know, because like for me, one of the most influential political thinkers is Mark Fisher, right? And it's all about like the idea of being able to imagine a future. Because so much of the way capitalism functions is making us believe this is the only way things can be. And so there's like, you know, that coupled with kind of my Christian outlook is like, you got to get into your head that this thing's about to cave in and you need to be a moral agent within that. What does that look like? I don't know. But you need to imagine that for somehow a new world is possible. And I think of there's a line in Solidarity Forever that, you know, is like pretty often quoted, but I think about a lot, which is, we can build a new world from the ashes of the old. And I don't know if he meant like, you know, I can't even think of who wrote the lyrics of that. It's not Pete Seeger, but that's the version I know. You know, I don't know if when they wrote that they assumed that civilization was just going to collapse when they said that or not. But that's how I read it now. Is this assumption that we are about to inherit ashes, and can we like build something just good with that? You know, like, and that's the challenge to any anarchist, communist, socialist, Christian listening. Is how are you going to be part of helping build this new thing? You know, because there will be a new thing, and that new thing could either be fascist or it could be a community of people who give a shit about each other.
Truly, it really doesn't have to be as complicated as like starting an entire org. Like, if you're just willing to like take responsibility for the people around you, like know your neighbors, talk to them, know who has a chainsaw in the neighborhood if a tree falls down, like. it's so everyday that it could be almost forgotten. But the less you romanticize mutually, the more it's just like your life.
Do it.
And it's an action and a lifestyle. The more we actually have a chance, I think, at creating a world where we can all live comfortably or at least safely.
Yeah.
And it's a lot. It's a whole thing you have to think about. But maybe like I think going forward, like I think having the autonomy to realize like how bad things are and what action you might need to take is something that you should have like personal autonomy for. Like whether or not you realize your role is to like plant a garden, or you need to do some more violent shit. Like against like a system that is violent to its core. I like understand and support your autonomy to take that action in and of itself. I wish more people would take personal responsibility for what's going on or what needs to be done, because
because like what you're saying, like you've been saying, is like revolution's complicated. Building a just society is complicated. Politics are complicated, but on the other hand, hope is simple.
Yeah, that's cool.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, hope is simple.
I think hope is a very simple aspect, but it's the part that gets lost. I think the easiest. And it's the simple thing of just believing that something better is possible. And that's what people, I think, are most scared of imagining.
Yeah.
Because it's easier to talk about how fucking dire everything is. It's so easy to talk about that. And I feel that you and I are both pessimistic people.
Yeah.
And the challenge is not to imagine things will just magically work out, but to believe that there is a possibility that we could be part of something that makes something better, that makes the world better.
And even if you don't get to see it, it's still worth a fight.
Yeah,
we're up against such great odds to think like it'll be a quick once and done kind of deal is crazy. But like being willing to take the responsibility for that effort into your own hands on whatever scale you deem fit and by any means necessary.
Yeah,
it's important. We can't form we can't form a world that we want and need without each other.
Yeah,
and, I think I like what you said. I think hope is simple sometimes. Just be willing to hope that have the hope enough to let that hope turn into courage. To do what is necessary, and understand that like every action has consequences, and being willing to meet those consequences as a friend when they arrive instead of shying away from them is important. Like every action has a reaction, and I think having the understanding that it's not always about you is really cool too. Like I think putting an effort in on the basis that it might serve another person or another community is really cool too. But yeah, it literally can just start at like checking in with your neighbors, making sure they're good, they have enough food.
Just actually being friends with people.
Yeah. Like, de-atomizing and de-individualizing your community, your neighborhood, and trying to build that relationship with your friends, like, and your people around you, like. You're there for them, they're there for you. The more effort you put in, people will be willing to put effort in for you and for their community. Man, like a lot of go ahead.
No, I mean it's simple in a lot of ways. It's just that I think it's just hard. And I think that's why we don't, I think that's why we like to get caught up sometimes in the complexities of, if you're on the left, it's easier to get caught up in a lot of the complexities of theory and stuff, because the actual request of just not fucking hating your neighbor is hard. We're encouraged to be these atomized narcissistic entities within the way things currently exist. And so just like, actually loving the people around you and caring about them, that's hard, but it's simple. And that's why it's hard, is because you want some nuance or complexity, but there is nothing to it. You need to just actually love the people in your life.
Truly, and find new people to love too. Like being willing to being willing to open up your circle a little bit. And you don't have to necessarily be best friends with everyone you meet, but like in your community, like understand that while people are so flawed, they're deserving of like food and safety and shit. And then you can work together towards something important and benefit each other's lives. Yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but I don't know. There's still room to speak for like more formal organization if you're trying to tackle a specific problem. Like so the biggest benefit to having like a formal organization when it comes to like ethnography mutual aid or Des Moines mutual aid is like we have a broader network to do like the propane distribution we've had. We've been able to organize that more properly to get more propane and more supplies to folks to help them survive winter season. And that's not necessarily something community aspect or like a smaller community mutual aid understanding would do, but like having like a more formal thing to do it to like organize that process is a little bit more helpful in that case. But again, that's case by case and person by person, something completely different. And I think that's something I love about anarchism is that it doesn't like you don't have to like have the right way of doing things. It's like the ability to decide what works for what situation and how everything works for you and for your community is really cool, and I think it should be upheld.
Yeah. Well, I think we probably need to move toward wrapping up here, but this has been super solid. I knew if we would just chat, it would be a pretty good time. Yeah, we didn't need to plan it too much.
My trick for getting all my brain out or all my thoughts out of my brain was to drink 4 liqueurs and really have to pee this whole time. so that's been good. I mean, I've been hyped up, been ready to rock.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Well, I guess I know you're not much on like Twitter these days or whatever, but I guess if somebody liked this episode and wanted to see more of whatever you do, is there some social media they could check you out on? Fuck them. All right.
I'm kidding. I guess if you want to follow my Instagram, it's bitter_fruit with 2 T's. I do some photography. My music's on there. I think I'm technically still in the band with Josiah, but we played one show. But I got some other projects. We're just getting back to get back in the swing of things with my project just as finished. It's like no wave hardcore stuff. I play drums in that, and then started releasing some solo lo-fi guitar shit as peaceeater, and that's been fun. But yeah, if you give a shit, that's cool.
Yeah.
If not, it's super cool.
Check it out. Yeah. Yeah, Mo's a cool guy. I wouldn't
go so far as say that. I'm around. I'm here. I haven't died yet. I keep not dying.
I haven't died yet.
I keep not dying. I don't think I'm supposed to. I think one day I can't die in a stupid way. Like too much stupid shit has tried to get me that I'll have to get shot to death or something. One day. This arc. I don't even remember.
And on that, on this episode about hope, I'm glad we have.
Yeah. And if you want to shoot me to death, I'll shoot. Send me a DM. I'll give you my address. We'll have it out. But fucking just love each other, Holmes.
it's simple.
Don't get all up in your head about it. Get off fucking Twitter. Get off Instagram. Stop fucking yelling at each other about dumb shit you can't do anything about. Support liberation efforts. Talk to each other, I guess.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up. Have a wonderful night, day, whatever you're listening to this, everybody. And I will see you later this month.